Since the dawn of the Holocene, humans have quickly conquered the Earth. Our heightened intelligence and cognitive capabilities allow us to adapt efficiently to different circumstances around the globe. Because humans nowadays are able to adapt and survive in pretty much any place on Earth, this poses an interesting question. Does our niche even still exist? In order to answer this question, this knowledge clip will delve into the following. What even is a niche? What factors is it comprised of? And how has this concept evolved over time? The term niche was first used in a scientific research paper back in 1917 by the American biologist and zoologist Joseph Grinnell. The original Grinnellian concept of an ecological niche focused primarily on how the abiotic conditions of a species' habitat steer its behavior. For example, the California thrasher, which is the species Grinnell was researching, is quite well adjusted to its chaparral habitat because of its ability to camouflage, helping it effectively escape and hide from its predators in the shrubland. The Grinnellian niche thus states that a species' behavior conforms to the circumstances around it if it is to survive in a given habitat. However, climate change alters the circumstances of a species' habitat and, because of this, its behavioral characteristics as well. In 1927, British ecologist Charles Sutherland Elton came up with an alternative definition of a niche, a species placed in its biotic environment rather than its reaction to the abiotic conditions of its habitat. The Eltonian concept of a niche states that species not only adapt to changes in their environment, but also affect their environment through their behavior. As an example, beavers are dependent on abiotic factors such as water availability and temperature, but can themselves also alter the structure of the ecosystem and available resources through their dams. Thus, changes in the abiotic circumstances of a habitat can affect many species indirectly as well, as the species that they interact with may become more or less prevalent in the ecosystem.
Around the 1950s, the concept of a niche was developed further by zoologist George Evelyn Hutchinson. The Hutchinsonian concept of a niche separates the definition of a niche into that of a fundamental and a realized niche. Whereas a fundamental niche details the full range of factors necessary to facilitate a species' survival, biotic relationships, like other species competing for resources, may cause any species not to occupy the entire area where optimal conditions are present. The total area that the species actually inhabits makes up its realized niche, and Hutchinson concluded that competition for resources is thus the biggest driver behind ecology. The Hutchinsonian niche somewhat bridged the gap between the Grinnellian and Eltonian niche definitions that came before, as both the fundamental and the realized niche largely correspond with either one. Yet another different interpretation of a niche was developed concurrently by evolutionary ecologist Robert MacArthur and Richard Levins. Whereas the Hutchinsonian niche focuses on competition between species, MacArthur and Levin's concept of a niche focuses more on the behavior and the resource exploitation of individuals. The resource utilization niche provides a detailed description of the natural history of an organism, consisting of, for example, its patterns of behavior and diet. And it then summarizes our ecological knowledge of this species. This somewhat mirrors the Grinnellian niche. However, the resource utilization niche focuses on the extent to which species with similar behavior can still coexist, as species dependent on the same resources may differ in their utilization of these resources. Since climate change is altering many biotic and abiotic conditions, competitive interactions can change as one species may end up being more efficient with its resources than others. Thus, some similar species that used to coexist might not be able to continue to do so in the future due to climate change. From these different interpretations, we can discern that the human niche does still exist. Whilst we previously mentioned that we can adapt quite well to different habitats, our use of resources and interactions with other species are much more prominent aspects of the niche that we currently fill. Our behavior in this regard has had major detrimental effects on the niches of other species. Due to our excessive resource exploitation and human-induced climate change, the fundamental and realized niches of many species have shrunk significantly, which had led to many species now being threatened with extinction. To remedy this, it is up to us to change our behavior and thus change our niche in relation to other species to change the world.